and then we'll get started. And as I said, it won't be too long. So
No worries. I know the drill.
perfect. Okay. Hello, my name is Evan Martins, and I'm an intern here at National Sports Media Association. And today I'm interviewing Brendan McGair, sports writer and copy editor for the Pawtucket Times and Woonsocket Call. Mr. McGair, what first sparked your interest in becoming a sports writer?
Well, Evan, appreciate the time. I guess, you realize sometimes that in life, you're not going to go as far as you can athletic wise. And, I still had that passion for sports. And I thought, one way I could maybe still remain connected to the games was tap into my writing side. And, lo and behold, it's paid off where, I've been able to enjoy a great career doing something I love.
Mm. Did that first start in high school, college, or what things did you get involved in those times and you help set you up for success now later in life?
So it was more in college when I was at Providence College. I remember going from my sophomore to my junior year. Went out for the student paper, and I wanted to get involved in sports. And one of the prime beats at that time was to cover men's hockey, and I covered that my junior and senior year, and that kind of opened doors for me in terms of internships from those internships you make connections, and next year you have a job pretty much out of college, which looking back was very fortunate for me because jobs in this market are very scarce. But
Yeah.
just going back to what I did in college kind of helps lay the foundation for what I was able to do once I graduated.
Hmm. So did those first jobs help you get to where you are now, or I guess what was the real stepping stone to get to the two places and the two things you're writing for now?
Well, I think maybe going from my first newspaper to my second newspaper, which is where I've been for the past 20 years, which is even hard to kind of even think of that. But making that, and even in the first few months, I remember covering the NCAA tournament, regional. It was up in Worcester that time, and player by the name of TJ Sorrentine. He played high school ball at St. Raphael, which is in our coverage area. He was at Vermont. It was his senior year, and he was playing against Syracuse in the NCAA tournament up the road. And he had a tremendous shot in the final minute to help Vermont upset Syracuse. And that was kind of the moment that really catapulted me at my next newspaper. And yeah, kind of like, and it kickstarted a lot of great moments that I've covered over my past 20 years or so at the Times and Call.
Cool. So as you said, you talked about the Vermont game, but what are some other maybe memorable sporting events or sporting stories you've had to write about and throughout your career?
I think they'll always, being a sports writer, the games always stick out. But, one that moment that will definitely stick out for me is being up at Fenway Park in 2013, the night that the Red Sox won the World Series that year. And at that time, I was the beat writer for the Pawtucket Red Sox, which was the AAA affiliate of the Red Sox. And I remember going into the Red Sox clubhouse after they beat the Cardinals in Game Six of the World Series, and kind of finding those Paw Sox connections to
Mm.
help the world to help that helped the Red Sox win the World Series that year. And one that stood out was the manager, Arnie Baylor, who the previous year in 2012 guided the Paw Sox to the 2012 Governor's Cup. And the following year, he was promoted to first base coach for the Red Sox. So, kind of in back to back years, he was part of two championship teams, a Governor's Cup team and then obviously a World Series winner. And I remember going up to him, to talk to him, and he had a bottle of champagne in his hands, and he was almost like going to like fake spray me a little bit, but I kind of like waved the white flag and said, "I come in peace. I just want to talk to you about how cool is it for you to kind of be part of two championship teams in better years." And one thing I did off of that was, I made a collage off of the 2013 season for the Red Sox, based on my credentials from that postseason and also newspaper fronts. And I have it actually hanging on my wall right now in
Mm.
my condo because it kind of keeps me a reminder of, what I was able to kind of be associated with. But that's one image I will always take with me is like after the Red Sox won the World Series, go in the clubhouse and try to find the first base coach, knowing that I was kind of up against deadline too a little bit. We
Hmm.
actually, newspapers still had pretty fair deadlines back then, but going up to him while he had a bottle of champagne in his hand just to talk to him, that's one image that will definitely stay with me forever.
Yeah, that's really cool. So as someone who spent years doing sports stories, what do you think makes a great sports story?
I think, for to make a great sports story, you have to kind of look for things beneath the surface. It's easy to kind of go to, say, a press conference, where you're surrounded by 20, 10 or 12 people and you're all writing the same thing. But can you kind of dig beneath the surface and to have something that's a little bit different than maybe the quote unquote competition? That's something that I've always kind of taken pride on. I'll give you a prime example. Just recently, we had the Rhode Island High School Baseball Championships, and I'm standing on the field, watching like the teams go through, the post, the shake, the post shake lines and everything, and I'm noticing players from the winning team go over to the huddle on the third baseline where the losing team was to kind of break down the season. And those are the cool moments that you see that you're thinking, that's worth kind of like doing a little story on because it's unnecessarily something that happened in the game. But if you let your eyes serve as your guide, that's something that you can kind of notice and think, it's pretty cool to kind of maybe do something about.
Hmm. Yeah. Obviously, sports media and just a lot of jobs in this era have changed a lot over time due to AI. So where have you seen sports media change? And yeah, what is the biggest things you've witnessed?
I think one thing I noticed is like there's more, the traditional media is kind of like rubbing up against, independent websites coming up, and I think it's kind of like trying to find that happy marriage between both in terms of like legacy media and also media that wants to like start up a blog or start up a website and kind of like working together. That's one thing I noticed is that a lot of independent writers who might not necessarily have like journalism training or a part of quote unquote legacy media, they want a seat at the table too. And it's kind of like, how do you kind of blend those two worlds where, everybody can kind of coexist?
Okay. And what advice would you give for a college student who wants to pursue a career in sports media, whether that's, writing or broadcasting?
I think one thing, everybody, at the high school, the college level, they just want to get to the fast track. They want to get to, like, for example, Fenway Park, Gillette Stadium, TD Garden to cover the Celtics, the Bruins, the Patriots, or the Red Sox. You have to start small at the grassroots level. It could be, the Little League game, the All-Star season. It could be the high school level. Don't be afraid to start small to work your way up the ladder. Everybody has big ambitions to kind of get to the top very quickly. But, if you really want to find yourself as a writer and as a professional, start at the local level because A, it's very rewarding, and B, you'll be able to find your voice that will be able to translate and you can carry it as you move up the ladder and hopefully get those dream jobs that everybody covets.
Hmm. On your way up to those obviously big levels of TD Garden, Gillette Stadium, when you're on those lower levels, is there ever a time where I don't know, I guess, I'm trying to think what I'm trying to say here. Not questioned it, but it made it harder that you wish you were just like there faster, or yeah, I guess something like that.
Yeah, of course, everyone wants to get to the top very quickly, and
Mhm.
that's maybe the nature of the world we live in now. We just want to kind of accelerate to the top, but I think just like maybe a baseball player who has to go through single A, double A, triple A before you get into the majors. You have to kind of appreciate the journey along the way as a sports writer, where you start local and centralized, grassroots level, and then move your way up because you maybe appreciate those parts
Yeah.
and they lay the foundation for you to get to where you potentially hope to be.
Yeah. Is there things in the lower levels that you enjoy more than you enjoy in the higher levels?
Well, I think, maybe people come up to you and they appreciate you being there,
Mhm.
parents or, coaches, because, you're not going to get that, pat on the back at the pro level. Like,
Yeah.
you're kind of, when you're in those locker rooms, the pro level, it's almost like you're a nuisance. You're like a fly and they just want to swat you a little bit. But
Mhm.
I think at the lower level, at the youth levels and the high school levels, they definitely appreciate you being there and they, won't hesitate to tell you that.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well that's all I got. So
Excellent.
I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this quick interview. So
Appreciate it, Evan.
are you going to be at the award show?
I don't know. I'm still trying to work on that, but
Okay.
I will be in touch with Dave on that.
Cool.
All right.
All right,
Thank
perfect.
thank
Well,
you,
thank you
guys.
so much.
Take care. Have
Hey,
a
you
good one.
too. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.